Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I see we have over 200 people attending so far our information session today, so I think we might make a start. So, as I said, my name is Sheenagh Rooney, and on behalf of the Department of Rural and Community Development, we're delighted to host this session for you today, and I'm sure that everyone on the call will get a huge amount out of it, and that's our earnest hope. So we're delighted today to be joined by our Minister, Heather Humphreys, and also our Minister of State, Joe O'Brien, and they'll both have opportunities to speak to you today. As you've gathered, the title of this event, which is Government Supporting Thriving Rural Areas and Vibrant Communities, we'll be discussing the full range of supports provided by the Department and the Government for rural and community development. And I think in particular today we want to try to highlight the policy backdrop to the funding behind these schemes, and highlighting what we're seeking to achieve through the supports that are available for those in rural Ireland and in communities. And in doing so, we really hope that we can better equip those in communities and organisations and those on the call today to tailor any proposals for funding support well, in order to unlock the potential that we know is there. We're also going to be publishing today our 2022 scheme calendar. That provides a summary of the timelines for some of DRCD's funding schemes this year, and that'll enable those who are interested to plan how you make your applications to do this effectively, and also to give you the time frame that we know that you need at times to put together these proposals and meet the objectives of the scheme. So as you'll hopefully have seen from the agenda, we have a number of panellists today, and they're going to provide further information for you on the main policy initiatives, including our Rural Future and Town Centre First, which are key policies in this regard in terms of what we're trying to achieve, an ambitious vision for rural Ireland. We're also going to be providing information on the important work that's ongoing in the department, collaborating with others on rural connectivity and indeed empowering communities. So the panellists that are joining us today, including departmental officials, are responsible for the key funding schemes that are on offer, and they will be available to take questions. And we'll try to get through as many of the questions as we can today, but we'll also have facility for follow-up on those questions as well, and for providing more information to you after the event. So just in terms of housekeeping, we are really delighted to have such a large attendance today. We have everyone's microphones muted, as you can expect, to allow everything to proceed smoothly. And if anyone has any particular questions or comments, if they just put them into the chat function on the right-hand side of the screen, we'll get through them, and we'll try to address some of them today, and others we'll certainly follow up on. So really, we're really hoping that everyone will get a huge amount out of this session, that you'll find it useful, that you'll find it productive. You'll see the supports that are clearly on offer there for rural Ireland and for communities. So without further delay, I'm delighted to invite our Minister, Heather Humphreys, to deliver an opening address. So over to you, Minister.
Okay, thank you, Sheenagh, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. This event is entitled Supports for Thriving Rural Areas and Vibrant Communities. So it's now almost a full year since I launched our Rural Future. And of course, that's the most ambitious policy for rural development in the history of the state. And can I just remind you that if you're tweeting about today's event, please use hashtag Our Rural Future. And I'm pleased to say we have made significant progress over the past year across government under the new policy, and you'll be hearing more from the team later on that. My Department of Rural and Community Development has got significantly increased funding as part of the National Development Plan. And as Minister, I want to make sure that funding is delivering maximum impact on the ground in communities. And what I really want today to be about is getting that conversation going on how you can make that happen and how you can deliver really transformational change in your own area. So whether you're a community group or a development association, a local chamber, a town team, or a local authority, the first thing you need is a plan. That means looking at your community, whether you live in a rural parish, whether you live in a village or in a town, and asking yourself, what could make this a better place to live, to work, or to raise a family? Talk to people, consult with local groups, get out your pen and paper and start making a list. And when you have that list, come and look at this department's funding streams, and indeed the funding streams across government, and see how we can help you. Does your community need a new playground? Or does the old basketball court or handball alley need an upgrade? Then look at our TAR programme. Is there a derelict eyesore of a building on the main street that could be regenerated for community use? Well, then look at the Rural Regeneration Fund and the Town and Village Renewal Scheme. Do you need a walking trail in your community, or are there works that can be carried out at a local lake or forest to improve access and enjoyment by people? Could you develop a blueway or for kayaking or a floating boardwalk? Then you look at the Outdoor Recreation Fund. And does your town and village look a bit grey and dreary? Well, then just look at places like Kenmare and Cove and look what they have done by injecting a bit of colour into their main streets. And you can use funding from our Streetscape Enhancement Scheme to do the same in your town. Are there a lot of commuters in your area? Do you need a remote working hub in your local town? Because we have a number of funding streams available to help with that. Does your local community centre or your parish hall need an upgrade? Do you need to carry out works to the stage or renovation works to meet fire safety regulations? Then apply under the new Community Centre Fund, which I'm announcing today. And those are that's just a few examples. And my officials will give you further details on all of these programmes later. Since I became Minister for Rural and Community Development, I have made significant changes to some of our funding streams because I want to see real and lasting impact in communities. For example, under Town and Village Renewal Scheme, I've increased the maximum grant available to €500,000, and I was very pleased to see some really ambitious projects coming forward from communities and local authorities under the latest round, which I announced just 2 weeks ago. And many of those projects involved bringing vacant and derelict buildings back into use as community spaces. And I actually made the announcement in an old train station in Mulherin in County Leitrim, which had been closed for decades. And it's fantastic, really, to see that beautiful historic building right in the town centre. And it's now going to be given a new lease of life. In the past, I know of a lot of applications coming forward from local authorities was being used for public realm type works, footpaths and signposts and those type of things. Well, that's not what these funding streams are about anymore. And I know sometimes if you look around and you see, you see some low-hanging fruit there, and maybe you just can't think of any better idea than an application for a new a footpath or a pedestrian crossing probably crosses your mind. But there are other funding streams for those types of works. And I'm going to be very clear today, the Department of Rural and Community Development won't be funding them. You have the Active Travel Fund and there's loads of other funds there for that type of work. So from staff, for staff from local authorities who are on the call today, I want you to work with my department, and I want to see real and meaningful consultation with communities for the applications which you put forward to this department. For community groups, local chambers, town teams who are all on the call, I want to see you breaking down the door of the local authorities with good ideas for projects under these schemes. These funding streams are going to be available on an annual basis. You might need to do a bit of homework. You might need to get planning permission before you're ready to put in an application. So talk to your local authority now so you can get the ball rolling. And that's what today is about. It's about getting that conversation going and getting ideas flowing in people's heads. So Gareth, JP and Paul from my department will be talking to you about the different funds that highlight best practice in terms of the sort of ambitious projects we want to see coming forward from communities. And there's going to be an opportunity for questions and answers. And if you have a really powerful example of what is happening in your own area, will you please speak up today and tell people about it. The local authority in Clare is the best in the country in terms of what they're doing in developing and promoting remote working facilities. So if there's somebody on the call from Clare, speak up, tell us about it. We want to hear. I was in Sligo last week. They're doing great things in terms of developing walking trails across the county. So if Michael is there from Sligo or Ray, speak up and tell us what you're doing. I was in Longford the week before, and there were some really, really good local walkways that I had the pleasure of visiting. So I tell you, Longford, don't be left behind there. And there's loads of other places around the country I've been. I've seen good examples. I want to hear about them. So this isn't a day to be shy. Some counties and communities are very good at putting forward really ambitious projects, which is what we want to see. We want to see ambition. We want to see vision. But there are others then who need a little bit of a nudge and encouragement, and we want to give you that encouragement, and we want to give you, the opportunity to make your town or your village or your rural area a better place. And under this year's schemes, I want to see impactful projects coming forward from local authorities, which have been developed in consultation with the local stakeholders and which are going to make a real and tangible difference in communities, towns and villages. And that's what today is all about. We want to highlight the sort of really transformational projects which are possible under our various funding streams when communities and local authorities come together and they use their imagination. So this webinar is all about learning. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll have a better understanding of the objectives underpinning our funding schemes, the range of funding that is available, and how best you can use it to make your communities stronger places. Our communications team have worked up a little short calendar with the opening and closing dates for all our funding streams. I have to say it's very useful. I had a look at it earlier, so use that. We're going to share it with everybody and pass it on to any community groups who you think may find it useful. So finally, can I just say, we also want to learn from you today. So if there are any observations you want to make or you want to get back to us with these over the days ahead, please feel free to do so. Because it's by working together that we get success, and we need you all on the ground, both local authorities and all the community groups, coming forward with the good ideas, and we want to support you. And I've said on many occasions, you have a vision. We want to help you realise that vision for your area. So I'm going to pass you back to our MC today, the Acting Secretary General of the Department of Rural and Community Development, Sheenagh Rooney. Geraghty.
Thanks very much, Minister, and thanks for getting us off to a great start there in terms of setting out a great ambition for the great ideas that we want to be part of in the future, and some fantastic examples of what we're seeing around the country in action. So, and real practical advice for people as well. So today is a day of learning, and we might just kick off first of all with Gareth Makim, who works in our Rural Strategy Unit here in DRCD, and the Minister mentioned our Rural Future, which is the government's ambitious plan for rural Ireland and communities. And Gareth is going to talk about our Rural Future and the progress that it's been making on the ground across government in its first year, and talking about the work programme and indeed relevant today, the key role that's been played by funding supports across government in delivering the policy, Our Rural Future. So over to you, Gareth.
Thanks, Sheenagh, and thanks, Minister, and thanks to everyone for the opportunity to just give you a brief update on our rural future. I'll try not to take too long because I know you're keen to get to the meat of the funding programmes later on. As Sheenagh said, I work in the Rural Strategy Unit here in the department, and our role is to coordinate the implementation of the Our Rural Future policy across government. So, well, I'm not going to go into too much of the detail of the policy itself because a lot of people will be familiar with it already, but our vision is for a rural Ireland which is integral to our national economic, social, cultural and environmental well-being and development. And as has been said, it's an ambitious vision. The policy is being implemented across government over the 5-year period to 2025. Within that, there are more than 150 measures for delivery, and these reflect the sort of ambitious objectives and vision that we've set out, and we firmly believe that the policy has transformative potential for rural Ireland. The measures also reflect the extensive and varied consultation that took place across the country during the development process over a period of more than 18 months prior to the publication of the policy. And our plan is for that engagement to be an ongoing feature of the implementation of the policy. We want it to be a living and evolving document. So we have set up a number of engagement mechanisms, such as our Rural Ideas Fora, which we held last year and we'll be holding again this year, the establishment of Rural Youth Assembly, engagement with higher education and research bodies, and other direct stakeholder engagement. We really feel that this constant feedback that we get from stakeholders is really key to the success of the policy. And that engagement then will drive the development of new commitments, which will feature in our progress reports and annual work programmes. So in terms of our implementation so far, we published last month the first progress report of the policy. That featured a total of 216 actions, which were a mixture of actions for completion in 2021 and those which are being delivered on an ongoing basis. And those actions then covered those updates covered all the actions that were featured in the 2021 work programme. And we were very pleased to record substantial progress across the whole series of actions. For those that were due for completion in 2021, a fraction under 80% were fully completed, and of those which were delayed or marked as ongoing, all of those still showed good progress towards completion. A number of these actions concerned the allocation of huge levels of investment through programmes delivered by DRCD and across government, providing targeted supports to assist economic and social development and also the COVID recovery in rural areas. In addition to the DRCD programmes mentioned by Minister Humphreys, which you'll hear more about later, some of the 2021 funding announcements across government included 17 million in the Outdoor Dining Enhancement Scheme, 45 million euro from Fáilte Ireland funding for heritage and cultural attractions, 13 million euro invested by Department of Transport's Outdoor Infrastructure Fund, and that department's commitment of more than 70 million euro in active travel infrastructure around the country. And we also had an outdoor public space scheme funded by the Department of Tourism and Culture. So this success of the first year of the policy is really down to the role played by departments across government and, of course, our implementation partners, many of which might be in attendance today, to administer funding programmes and deliver projects at local level. Yeah, so as Sheenagh mentioned, we're currently finalising the 2022 work programme, and that will continue the implementation of our rural future across government, and the actions in there reflect, again, the wide range of engagements that have taken place across the past year. So there will be new commitments and new actions and things to follow on from the progress made in 2021. And again, there's going to be a huge amount in there in terms of new funding for rural and community development projects. And the Minister has mentioned the huge commitment under the National Development Plan, and obviously the DRCD budget has also received increase for 2022. So that's a quick update on our rural future. If anybody, if there are any questions, happy to take them. And also, but if you come up with something that you don't think of right now, happy to. There's an email address there on the screen, which people are more than welcome to send any queries to. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gareth. And I think you've clearly highlighted the progress that's already been made on our rural future, and that's great to see. And I think everyone on the call will note the increased budget in this department that's available now for ambitious plans and supports. And this is all about getting people back living and working in rural Ireland. I mean, Gareth, just one question. It might be good to give us a sense of just how departments are actually working together on this policy and leveraging the various funding schemes that exist across government that are helping to develop the objectives of the policy, and how that department's working together is going. Thanks.
Thanks, Sheenagh. Yeah, look, as you say, the funding is vitally important to achieving the ambitions in our rural future. It's one thing to outline the objectives, but the investment needs to be there to see those through. And the huge level of funding across government is a sign of the commitment to make sure there's meaningful capacity to deliver on that policy. So our engagement with other departments in delivering that has been hugely constructive and probably exceeded our expectations in many respects. There's a real understanding across all departments, but particularly some of our key departments in respect of our rural future around the importance of the policy as a national priority. And in addition to the rural and community investments being delivered by this department, other departments are investing hugely in rural and regional areas. A couple of examples that will be in the new work programme. The Department of Housing's Urban Regeneration and Development Programme has been allocated €159 million for 2022, much of which will be invested in the larger rural towns that aren't eligible for the RRDF. The Department of Transport has a budget of €60 million in capital funding for greenways this year. So there's huge funding and huge awareness of the need to deliver it to rural and regional areas across the country.
Thanks very much, Gareth. And just to say, I should have highlighted at the beginning just that we will be making a recording of this event available afterwards for those that haven't been able to join us today, and we'll send details to all those who registered for today's event. So moving now on to our next contribution, and this is from JP Mulherin, who heads up the Rural Programmes and Policies unit here in DRCD. And the Minister spoke passionately about getting people back living and working in rural Ireland, and at the heart of that is Town Centre First. And JP is going to take us through that particular policy and then link into the funding that's available, and then we're going to have contributions on how we can actually see this in action on the ground. So over to you, JP.
Thank you, Sheenagh. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Minister. As Sheenagh said, I'm just going to briefly introduce you to our new Town Centre First policy and highlight some of the funding opportunities available within this department to underpin that policy and to support rural towns and villages generally. And I'll be followed by Nollaig Whyte, who has kindly joined us from Roscommon County Council, who will talk a little bit about this in practice and the reality of delivering projects within Boyle, in particular in Roscommon, and the lessons they've learned as part of that process. So in terms of the Town Centre First policy itself, it was launched last month by Minister Humphreys and Minister of State Peter Burke, and it's really about rejuvenating our towns and ensuring there's life and vibrancy in our town centres. It's a key commitment in our rural future, developed by the Department of Housing and ourselves, and it really is a cross-government initiative involving a number of different government departments and local authorities. And I think that's appropriate when you think of the type of challenges and indeed the opportunities that are presenting for towns. And you think of everything from vacancy and dereliction to town centre living, climate adaptation, sustainable transport, enterprise development in towns. This really requires a collective effort across government, and the Town Centre First policy aims to bring all of those different partners together to achieve that aim. And really it's about building on best practice that's already happening out there. So what does that mean in practice for a town? And I think that chart there on the right hand side at its most simple level shows you what Town Centre First is about. And it is about what's already happening in many towns and bringing a coordinated approach to that. It sets a framework for towns to follow so that each town can develop their own approach, their own tailored response, because we know each town is different and a one-size-fits-all approach won't work. And I think central to that is the bottom-up approach. And by that, we mean it's led locally by town teams. That's town teams of local stakeholders, local businesses, local community organisations supported by the local authority. And then it's plan-led. So the town team is leading on the development of the plan that's informed by a health check, an analysis of the town, creates a vision for the town that everybody can buy into and that all of the stakeholders in the town buy into. And then ultimately it's about delivery. And we don't want to be developing plans for the sake of it. And Town Centre First very much brings all of the different funding streams together behind Town Centre First. And that's not just for this department, but across government generally. So look, that's easier said than done. And, we're very conscious that we have to put in the enabling provisions to allow this to happen. And there's 33 actions in the report. And I'd, recommend that people take at least a look at the executive summary to see the direction that we're going in. But essentially, some of the key things about building capacity at national level and for local authorities to deliver all of this. We're establishing a National Town Centre First office to coordinate at a national level and to drive this nationally. There will be a network of town regeneration officers to support town teams and build their capacity to deliver this and support them in delivering Town Centre First plans. Overall, the Town Centre First plans are central to all of this. There will be guidance and support to do that. We've already provided funding. Minister Humphreys announced the first 26 towns to get funding of €100,000 each to develop these towns, and that funding is also used to support and build the capacity of town teams. There will be a toolkit, which essentially will be a web portal that will provide access to all of the resources that town teams and local authorities need to deliver on Town Centre First, be that guidance around key themes, case studies, access to all of the funding across government, so that there's a one-stop shop where they can find access to all of this. I think we're acutely aware of the need to improve our knowledge of our towns as well. So part of that will be building on the Heritage Council's health check model, which some of you will be aware of, and building better data nationally on all of our towns. And central to it, as I said, is the funding that will be provided to deliver on all of this. So just very quickly to highlight, excuse me, some of the funding streams provided by this department. I suppose our flagship programme really is the Rural Regeneration and Development Fund. For towns with a population of up to 10,000 people. The Category 1 projects under that are projects of really large-scale capital projects. We're talking funding of between €500,000 and €10 million for those type of projects. And Category 2 projects then are the sort of seed funding that supports applicants to get to the stage where they can apply for the bigger Category 1 projects. As you'll see on the chart, there's significant investment already gone into this, almost €300 million. 2/3 of that is already gone into town centre regeneration, and that's going to continue and grow in the future. And there is a Category 1 call open at the moment for applications, and that closes in April. And it's very much aligned with Town Centre First and on revitalising our towns and villages and investing in infrastructure around remote working and connectivity and town centre residency and enterprise development and all of the different aspects that you would expect from a fund of this nature. Supporting that, we have the Town and Village Renewal Scheme, which the Minister mentioned as well. And that provides the funding up to €500,000 for investment in our towns and villages. As Minister Humphreys said, we announced €19 million in funding in recent weeks. And there's details of all of those projects up on the department's website, which gives you an idea of the type of things that we're supporting. And Minister Humphreys mentioned the train station in Moat. We're also tackling vacancy and dereliction associated with vacant properties, old schools and Garda stations and banks and other properties in town. It's also focusing on green spaces and recreational amenities, supporting new remote working hubs, and there's also a new project development measure in there, so supporting towns in bringing projects to a shovel-ready stage. So the design work and the procurement work and the planning work that's required to get it to a shovel-ready stage. And that's something that was new, that was introduced last year. And we're finalising the details of the 2022 scheme, but we expect that we'll continue along the same vein in supporting these type of projects. And just quickly to mention some of the other ones, we have a streetscapes enhancement scheme. There was €7 million provided last year for painting and lighting and murals and shop fronts in towns. And there will be a new streetscape scheme announced by Minister Humphreys in the coming weeks. And then some other supports, just to mention them briefly, that are linked to our towns. The Outdoor Recreation Infrastructure Scheme, which funds trails and cycleways and amenities in our forests and our rivers and our lakes. So these are very important amenities close to towns, and they really are a part of a town's offering, for not just for locals, but to attract visitors into the towns as well. So this programme provides funding for that sort of infrastructure. It also provides funding for linking towns to this infrastructure, so linking with the greenways and linking with the forests and river amenities. That's open for applications at the moment for the smaller projects through local development companies, and for the others, for all of them through local authorities. And then just finally to mention the CLAR programme particularly important for smaller rural villages. There's an expanded Measure 1 under that programme this year, which covers all types of community facilities and amenities. And there's also a new measure for particular focus funding for our islands. And again, that programme is open at the minute. Details on all of these are available online on the department's website, and we have information sessions for the local authorities as well. So with that, very quick, speedy run through all of the schemes. I might just hand you over to Nollaig Whyte, who will talk a little bit about this in the reality of practice in Boyle and Roscommon. So just hand over to you now, Nollaig.
Thanks, JP, and thanks, Minister and Department, for giving us a chance to showcase some of the work we're doing here in Roscommon. Just, I suppose, what the ethos of what we follow is very much everything we're doing is about attracting people, making our towns vibrant. So back in the 1960s, the sociologist and urban planner William Whyte, no relation, identified that what attracts people most, it would appear, is other people. And he said it's difficult to design a space that will not attract people. But unfortunately, what is remarkable is how often this has been achieved. So very much plan-led approach is, as is in the town centre first. And we follow the teach approach. So I won't go into each of them because they've been covered both by the Minister there and JP. But the second one there, encourage those who don't always want to participate. So a lot of people are busy. They don't want to be on a committee. So we're always trying to come up with innovative ways of getting people in over a cup of tea, maybe getting an interesting speaker, just something different. And then when you have them in, encourage them to get involved slowly. That way it's not left to the same people every time to do the work, which I'm sure a lot of community groups on the call will say is something they're experiencing. And the last one there, just jumping to, is the local authority can do so much, and we can do a lot of the large infrastructure works, but without the community and without a town team or other group there to take what we do in terms of public realm or the buildings and keep them used, it's of no avail to anyone. So just focusing in briefly here on Boyle 2040, which was a master plan done back a number of years ago, very much based on an urban framework model. And the question it asked was, is there life on our streets? And I think this is what an awful lot of towns are asking. The outline was to look at the story. So the data on the town, the challenge is probably quite similar in most areas, and then the response. I'll just go through those to give you a sense. So just for those of you not familiar with Boyle, it's in North Roscommon. It's really lucky in the sense it's close to Lough, which hopefully many of you have visited, has Boyle River in the middle of the town, is on the Shannon Earn system, and has some amazing heritage buildings. King House we'll come back to because it's a project under RRDF. A lot of the streets have retained their original charm, and for any of you who follow Chris O'Dowd or Moon Boy, you'll have seen some of Boyle in those series. So the challenges, I'm sure this is common to a lot of our towns across the country. It's hollowing out and erosion of our urban communities. So Boyle now covers 465 hectares with 2,500 people. But back in 1831, it only covered 57 hectares with nearly 1,000 more people. So it was a much more vibrant, busy, active place. So this, I suppose, is what's happened. Our towns have spread out, and the whole emphasis in the town centre first is about pulling that back into the centre. The largest loss of population was around the Boyle River, and that's where we've concentrated a lot of our response. Boyle lost a lot of its urban functions in terms of being the key shopping town, and that in turn lost the vibrancy of the town. So it's trying to find a new way for Boyle to come back. It's really a story of untapped potential, and that's very much what Boyle 2040 identified. So the response, so kind of I've split this into three. The first one being our town centre streets. So just a mix of funding, and not just DRCD funding, but others I'll just go through. So Town and Village was our kick-off fund, and that enhanced the Shambles area, which is right in the centre of the area we've been focusing on. And also it improved the streetscape leading to King House, which is owned by Roscommon County Council, but very much a community building used for everything from arts events to post-funeral meeting point, etc. The Historic Towns Initiative, which is a Heritage Council initiative, we got funding back in 2019 to look at the buildings leading up to King House. That made a massive difference in terms of improving the appearance, doing essential maintenance, conservation works, but also since then we've seen a number of shops open on that street. Buildings have changed hands so that they're starting to bring a bit of life back. The Streetscape Enhancement Programme, which JP just mentioned there, is opening again shortly. So that is covering some shop front improvements and paint scheme works. Boyle was one of the 4 towns that we chose. Under the COVID accelerated measure 2 years ago, that was the town team there were active in getting Christmas lights and working with the council in terms of new approach signage. We also got some funding working with our tourism section for events, seasonal events in King House, so as to bring people into the town centre. The RRDF, it might look like we got 3 RRDFs, but I've just split this one into Streetscape. So it's the current one we're working on has streetscape enhancements in the cultural quarter and car park area around King House and around the old Royal Hotel site, which I'll cover next. So just to give you an example of the transformation, so this is the Shambles area, very much just a throughway car park. This on the right-hand side is where we've introduced very high quality granite paving and a seating area. So this is a little cafe on the river and very much brings a lot of life in the summertime to this area right in the middle of the town. The conservation of Main Street. So here on the bottom left, you can see there was a lot of damage to the shop fronts, and through splice repairs and bringing back some of the original features around the doors, it's totally transformed a number of the facades. This one here, for anyone who's into their drama, it would have been the former home of Maureen O'Sullivan. And again, huge transformation to this building. So we're delighted to say that it has led to a number of new people, people changing hand in terms of the property, but also a number of shops reopening on this street. Conserving and reimagining our built heritage. The council bravely took the move to buy the old derelict Royal Hotel site, very much an eyesore in the town centre, and working with the department and the town team through Town and Village and RRDF, we are in the process of converting that derelict building into an enterprise centre and exhibition space, and also to develop the Riverside Promenade. And very much, I think, in the outdoor recreation and Town and Village this year, there's an emphasis on where you have water in a town centre to look at either outdoor recreation or town and village. RRDF, so this is the other part of the RRDF I mentioned in the last slide, and it's around improving the energy efficiency of King House. So that's a 3-storey period house with several different exhibitions. So we're looking to enhance and add to the exhibitions. There's a number of craft businesses on the overall campus and a cafe. And again, it's doing works to that area, always trying to bring more people into the town centre. And Creative Ireland funding has been sourced to put in a new goldsmith exhibition in King House, which is opening in April and will be very much worth a visit for anybody in the region. Just to give you an example, this was the old Royal Hotel site. This is it at the moment under construction, thanks to RRDF. And this is the end product that we will hopefully have in a number of months. Moving on to enhancing outdoor recreation. Back in 2018, we applied for funding to link Lough Key, because that is the honeypot in terms of tourism for us in the area, to Boyle through a cycleway. It's been hugely successful both for locals and for tourists. Also of keeping the focus on, if people are going to live in the town centre, they need access to outdoor facilities quite close by. So we're also enhancing the angling, swimming, other facilities at Dune Shore Amenity on Lough Key. The town team under Healthy Ireland are quite involved in promoting cycling. So they have worked with local businesses to develop cycle-friendly menus, gradient signage, etc. And under Fáilte Ireland funding, there's a destination project, destination towns project underway. So that's about making it much easier for tourists to navigate around the different beautiful laneways around the riverside, improve some of the public realm, the pleasure ground enhancement, which I'll cover in the next slide, introduction of murals and other activities to really emphasise the potential of oil in terms of tourism. So this is the pleasure grounds, which is actually the gardens of King House. So this is looking a bit tired. Here we can see the transformation. So it's just nearing completion. So once the growth comes, you'll see a bit more greenery in it. And here is the Lough Key to Boyle cycleway, or you can call it the other way around either, but very much an attractive route for families and passing a number of our heritage buildings such as Boyle Abbey, King House, etc. So just learning for our other towns, we have picked Strokestown and we're very much actively working with the town team there in terms of developing the town centre first plan. So I suppose Boyle 2040 very much focused on this, the story, the challenges and opportunities. From learning what we've done with other towns and villages, we feel that needs to then be followed with identify the themes. What are the main themes for that particular town? And then from there, you need your prioritised action plan. That needs to include your short, medium and long-term actions, who's going to lead it, and indicative cost, and what are the constraints in terms of developing it. Then on to implementation. So it's no good having a plan if, and we really appreciate that our groups are really busy. So everything we can do to make it easier. So we're looking at developing a toolkit for each of the actions prioritised. And then you need to select your team. Some people are interested in running festivals. Some people are interested in capital projects. Others are interested in actually running a project. So your team may vary and may overlap. And in some cases, we've found here, communicate, motivate, mentor. We've one very successful village who operate through a WhatsApp group. So they have a large 160-person WhatsApp group, and then they divide into smaller WhatsApp groups depending on the project. Constantly motivating each other by very regular contact. And we also bring a facilitator back to work with them. We feel as part of the town centre first plan, this is absolutely key. We don't want somebody coming in, doing a piece of work and walking away. So along with the structure that JP has outlined in terms of town centre regeneration, we would have a facilitator that will be there longer than just doing the plan. And finally, accountability. Accountability is, so if you have a subcommittee that they're reporting back to the main town team, the town team in turn are reporting back to the wider community, and in turn working with our municipal district members and the full council. So it's accountability. Are you delivering what you said you deliver? Are you making others aware of what you're doing? And just to emphasise this whole collaboration and building capacity of the town team, but also other stakeholders. So one of the initiatives we've put in place overall is to do an outdoor recreation strategy for the county because of all the outdoor under ORS. And that very much has involved working with communities, with town teams, but also with various state agencies. So just to conclude, sorry, the last slide isn't there, but just to give an example of other plans we've done with Balladreen and Atleek that follow on from the model that was taken in Boyle 2040. So hand back there to you, JP.
Thanks very much for that, Nollaig. And I think that does really show it in practice, you know, the way that all the different funding streams, not just from this department, but across government, can collectively come to support the work of town teams and what towns are trying to achieve. So with that, I might just hand back to our host, Sheenagh.
Thanks very much, JP, and thanks very much, Nollaig, and in particular to yourself, Nollaig, as JP said there, you've really very clearly outlined to people how you can leverage the supports that are available and make great great things happen in your community. And I suppose the focus of my questions was going to be about, you know, what learnings can you share with others who want to get to, you know, where Boyle has got. And I actually see, you know, the slide that's up there, actually you've taken the time to bring those learnings out. But is there any one thing in particular that you would focus on for someone who hasn't yet embarked on a town and village proposal or an RRDF proposal, just and they're at an earlier stage of development than perhaps you obviously are now? What advice would you give them?
I suppose, Sheenagh, you have to have some structure, whether it be a town team or a community group. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a plan, whether it's a loose plan, which some communities work to, or this is very much the model that we will be working with our community groups and town teams too. But I suppose the biggest thing is, now that we have the calendar that comes out each year, you have to be ready. So you have to have your permissions in place. You have to know, you know, is it going to be sustainable? You have to have your design in place. So without that, you're going to miss potentially a year or two of development. But I think the biggest thing is, since COVID, a lot more community groups are jaded and time is of the essence. So constant capacity building. And the biggest thing I would always say to groups is there needs to be a bit of fun in it, because otherwise you're not going to volunteer.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nollaig. And I'm conscious that in our department also we're very much involved in that whole volunteering piece as well, and getting people to help with the development of their town and villages. And I think people can get an immense amount out of it. Just one of the questions that's come through, JP, is just in terms of the town centre first policy and just its ability to get community groups involved. You know, I suppose what advice do you have potentially for community groups who want to be part of Town Centre First, and do you feel the mechanisms are there for them to get involved?
Yeah, sure, Sheenagh. Look, it's hard to get across in 4 or 5 minutes what we're trying to achieve under Town Centre First, but it really is built around communities, and the whole idea is that town teams built out of communities and local businesses will be driving all of this. So, and it's a long, medium to long term process, as Nollaig has outlined there. So really, for those towns that don't have town teams in place, it's about sitting down with your local authority and getting them up and running. It's about availing of the supports that are there to do that. There will be town regeneration officers now in every local authority area who will be working with local communities to try and support them through this process. And just to add, a very particular focus of the Minister and of the department is on those towns that have struggled a little bit in the past and haven't had that ability for communities to come together and really to leverage the funding that's out there. We know that some communities are very good at it and others need a bit more support. So a real focus of Town Centre First will be trying to support those communities and giving the local authorities the resources to be able to do that. So first port of call is sit down with the local authority, sit down with your town team if you have one, and look at what other towns are doing. There's a myriad of information up on our website as a starting point, a storyboard there that shows the sort of projects that have been done through RRDF in Town and Village, and they give a good example of things that can be done.
Thanks very much, JP, and thanks again, Nollaig, for your very valuable contributions. So in the interest of time, we might move on to the next theme for today. So obviously the department supports are also focused on rural and regional connectivity, and we're happy to be joined today by Jake Ryan, who heads up the department unit that is concentrating on this area. And Jake is just going to talk us through the objectives of that work, and then we're going to talk about how people are leveraging particular supports. So over to you, Jake.
Thank you, Sheenagh. So my name is Jake Ryan. I head off the Regional Development and Innovation Unit. So that's the unit responsible for DRCD's activity in the digital and the connectivity space. So just to start off and say, like, DRCD doesn't just recognise the role of connectivity and digital to kind of support balanced regional development. Like we get it, we understand it, and we're at the forefront of dealing with the issues that present in rural areas, particularly. New technologies can and do allow people to work from their communities. They allow people to move from urban to rural. They reduce commuting, and remote working makes more time for the things that matter, which is clearly family and community. We're also aware that digital can support agriculture and other rural enterprises. Digital can reduce costs and it can increase productivity. it allows domestic and international employers access to the most talented people wherever they are, whether they're in our cities, in our towns, and in our villages. So with that in mind, I'm just going to briefly take you through a selection of what DRCD is doing to increase rural connectivity and to increase the uptake of digital over the last few years. So that's what we're doing now, what we plan to do in the future, and what we have done. Just going to get my slides going. So in the first instance, very quickly, I'm going to talk about Wi-Fi for EU. This is the launch of the Wi-Fi for EU network in Nenagh and Tipperary. Right now, we have 967 Wi-Fi for EU Wi-Fi hotspots live across the country, and we expect another 200 odd to come in short order. Wi-Fi for EU is a European Commission project. The Commission has awarded 1.7 million euros to Ireland, and what the funding does is it allows for safe, free-to-use Wi-Fi in public places like town squares, main streets, libraries, parks, and this is for citizens to use. This is for the general public to use. It's free of advertising. It doesn't harvest your data for commercial reasons. It's safe. It's very easy to use. And we very early on saw the clear potential of this program to support a range of people, not just remote workers and students, but tourists, everyday people knocking around their towns. So we've committed to co-fund it up to another 1.7 million to extend the reach of the Wi-Fi for EU program. As I say, we're on track for 1,000 Wi-Fi for EU hotspots this year. If you have questions about it, I would recommend that you contact your local authority broadband officer. They're the ones that have rolled them out in each of the local authority areas. You can get the broadband officer's details from gov.ie. That information is there. So the next part I want to talk to you about is Connected Communities, which is the Broadband Connection Point Initiative, the BCP initiative. So BCPs are amongst the first deliverables under the National Broadband Plan, and it kind of represents the best of government partnership, right? So it's a partnership between central government, so between our department and the Department of Communications, Department of Environment, Climate and Communications and ourselves, and also each of the local authorities across the country. BCPs are publicly accessible sites. Typically they're community centres or GEA clubs. There's a few libraries and there's some tourist spots in there too. So we're not just coordinating with the local authorities, we're coordinating with communities too. BCPs get a temporary wireless connection, a high-speed broadband connection, which they keep until fibre broadband turns up under the NBP. And what we've done is we've come in behind that connectivity and added in a range of services with pilot projects, but we're really kind of encouraging the use of BCPs as community amenities. So we're trialing e-health activities in some. There's an awful lot of training going on at the moment, adult digital skills training, but also for kids and for teenagers too. There's a range of arts and culture programs. You can learn to play the uilleann pipes online, and we're even it can even be arranged for you to borrow a set of uilleann pipes while you're learning. If you don't want to buy the pipes before you've tried, then that can be done too. We have islands in the BCP program. There's only 2 islands left to go, but there are 14 islands altogether that have been connected. Typically a BCP gets 150 megabit connection for on-site use. We are going to scale up the pilot projects, and we can scale up the support that we're giving to BCPs over the years. Over the years ahead. At the moment, we have 250 sites live. There'll be 300 by the end of this year. And one of the things that we're exploring at the moment, and keep an eye on our website to keep updated on it, is the possibility of opening out for additional BCPs. If we do that, we won't be providing the connectivity. These will be sites that already have connectivity, but we'll bring them into the BCP network so they can qualify for funding, to apply for funding schemes, for supports, for rural testbed projects, and everything that goes with being a member of the BCP network. I'm just going to talk very briefly about the National Connected Hubs Network, and I imagine many of you have seen adverts, billboards, heard the radio adverts. So the National Connected Hubs Network is not just a solution to a rural issue; it's a national priority. So just to be clear, the national hub network at the moment stands at just over 200 sites that are on a single platform, a single website. So if you want to work remotely from a co-working or remote working site, you go to connectedhubs.ie and you can book a seat anywhere in the country. As long as the hub is signed up for our platform, you can book. We'll handle the payments. We don't take any money from this. Like this is a service. But as an example of the way DRCD works, so to get to where we are now, which is 200 odd hubs on the way to 400 hubs that will be on the national platform, we started with 4 hubs. One of them is in Nollaig's own county in Roscommon, where we started off with the 4 DigiWest hubs that was funded under the RDF and supported by this unit. Those 4 hubs were so successful that the Western Development Commission then expanded it out to the Western region. And when COVID hit, we were asked by the minister, could we expand that to a nationwide network? And we did. So we took it from 4 hubs, we took it up to what will almost certainly be 400 hubs when we're finished. Aside from having the common booking platform, there are a range of benefits for hubs to get on there. Any hub can apply to get onto the Connected Hubs network, onto connectedhubs.ie. There's dedicated funding. There's a wonderful peer network of support, and also you may be involved in our next advertising campaign. Before I go on to the next thing, we're just going to play a quick video that should give you an idea of what the Connected Hubs look like. Thank you, Noel.
I remember in 2017 when the conversation started around remote working. A lot of people were sceptical then. They thought it was a good idea, but not something that they would ever put into practice. But if COVID has taught us one thing, it's that the benefits of remote working are huge. Less time spent commuting, a lower carbon footprint, more time spent with family and friends, but above all, a better quality of life. When people think remote working, sometimes they think it's working from your kitchen table or your bedroom office. Remote working is much more than that. It's about being able to work in a local hub within your own town and village. And that's what Connected Hubs is all about. What we are doing is huge. We are taking old buildings from cinemas, convents, Garda stations to old train stations like here in the Station House in Mulherin. And we are turning them into state-of-the-art remote working facilities, backed up by high-speed, quality broadband. And through Connected Hubs, we are bringing together over 400 remote working facilities under one simple app. So this means you can pick up your smartphone, log on to Connected Hubs and book your working space for your working day.
Co-working enterprise hubs based in towns and villages around the country and on the network of Connected Hubs allow companies to access local talent and are hugely beneficial to local people. They don't have to be fully remote. They can come in, meet here and go back out to their homes again.
Working in a rural setting is in many ways, the ultimate dream for somebody like myself. Community is very important. It's important to most people in the area. So having a business the likes of the GTech Hubs in the middle of that community is of huge importance.
It enables a much better work-life balance and you're networking with people you probably wouldn't have got to meet if you're sitting on a train or in a car to a bigger city.
It's being around people, bouncing off people, getting the energy from other companies that are working here, as opposed to maybe working in a silo of your own company or from home. It's just a good atmosphere for work and for innovation.
The hub really gave us the flexibility to be able to come in, get a small hot desk here in the Rubicon Centre. And since then we've grown to 40 full-time people and another 60 contractors. So it has allowed us the flexibility to be able to scale up.
A hub like ourselves here at Bloom HQ offers so many different facilities. We have everything from hot desking that you can use on an hourly, daily or weekly basis. We have meeting rooms, training rooms, and we have a wonderful conference centre that also works as a community centre as well.
The facilities here in the Rubicon Centre are top-notch. We obviously have our own office space, but we have a lot of investor meetings. We sometimes have customers coming into us, and being able to bring them into a professional setup such as the boardroom here in the Rubicon gives us a more professional feel to our company as well.
As Minister for Rural and Community Development, I'm determined to ensure that remote working becomes a permanent fixture for tens of thousands of people. We will not go back to the old normal. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and it's one I'm not prepared to let go. Through Connected Hubs, we are putting in place the tools to make this goal a reality, This is the next chapter for remote working in Ireland. Log on to connectedhubs.ie and embrace the benefits of working from within your own community.
The Minister has made €5 million available to add capacity, remote working capacity across the country, right? So if you have an existing hub, right? So this money is not to build a hub. It's not for brand new hubs. This is for hubs that already exist. If you have an existing hub and you have a plan to add capacity, to add more hot desks, to add a meeting room, to improve the conditions, to make it a more professional work environment, you can apply. This is not limited to local authorities. Commercial operations can apply, not-for-profit and social enterprises, community centres. If you're already providing a remote work service and you want to add more, then you should get in contact with us. The link is on the slides that we can't see, but if you go to gov.ie and type in Connected Hub School, you'll be able to get information about it. The call is live now. You can put in applications. You can put in multi-hub applications for up to 5 sites. You can put them all together and take reduce the costs across like economies of scale, or you can apply for an individual hub from €10,000 up to €75,000. And the closing date for that is the 4th of April. Sheenagh, I may stop there.
No, thanks very much, Jake. And I just see Geraldine has shared the link there in terms of the video, so people will be able to see that after the event. So thanks very much for that, Jake. And look, I mean, this investment and leveraging of the government investment through the National Broadband Plan is absolutely key to bringing, as you said, allowing people to work regardless of wherever they are, and also as a valuable asset for communities as well. So, Jake, I mean, maybe just to finish off from your point of view, I note there was obviously the very successful launch there by the Minister of the Connected Hubs recently. Do we have any idea at the moment about the usage of the hubs and I suppose how people go about interacting with them and booking that remote working space, and how the usage is going in terms of people using them? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So like the Connected Hubs platform is phenomenal, to be honest. Like, and I know I'm particularly biased. Like, I'm not being I'm not being even-handed about this, but at the moment we're estimating today, right? So right now it's very difficult to get numbers for right now because those sessions haven't finished, but we're estimating today there's about 14,500 people working from hubs that are on the Connected Hubs platform. And just to put that into context, right, that's 14,500 people across about 200 hubs, a little over 200 hubs. There's a very, very strong chance by the end of this year we'll be up to 400 hubs on the platform. And if this percentage carries on as it is, then I mean, we're talking, 25,000 people will be working out of Connected Hubs. An awful lot of those are out in rural and isolated areas. Has it grown? It has. Like we came from a point a couple of weeks ago where we were looking at 52% occupancy. We're estimating we're over 65% occupancy now. I think that tracks quite neatly along with the lifting of public health measures that we've seen recently. I think that's had it's been very difficult for the hubs sector, and they've been brilliant. Like, they've been very resilient, but to be honest, I don't see those numbers decreasing anytime soon. I think, once we have the platform up and running and we get an idea of what normal looks like now when it comes to remote and hybrid working, we'll have a better idea of the capacity needs in the sector. But at the moment, it's looking very promising. It's picking up very nicely, and we're very happy with the way it's working out.
Thanks very much for that. And just to say, I mean, we have had some people sharing some observations and comments on the chat, so thanks for that. And we had Angela, representative from Leader in Kilkenny, sharing the experience of a small community area, Pilltown in Kilkenny, where I think they've leveraged funding and worked probably with their broadband officer to put in place their own sort of high-speed broadband network for 150 households in their area. and that seems to be working well, and they're seeking to expand that onto a number of other premises as well. So thanks for sharing that. We also had some contributions in terms of, tips for getting communities involved and what needs to be in place to make good things happen. So people talking about things like a needs analysis, again, having a structure that was mentioned earlier by Nollaig, and also KPIs, and just when we've put money in place, coming back and knowing that it's actually delivered. So thanks for your contribution there, Jake. We might move on to our next theme for today, extremely important one, and this is how we're using funding that's available in the department to support communities when they need it most. And Paul Geraghty, who heads up our Social Inclusion and Communities unit here in DRCD, is going to give us a talk through on where some recent initiatives in terms of supporting empowered communities. So over to you, Paul.
Thanks very much, Sheenagh. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Minister. Just great to see such a large turnout today, and I see a lot of familiar names on the guest list there, so hello to everybody. I'll be brief with one eye on the clock. I see that we're cutting it kind of fine, so we've heard a lot today so far about what we're doing in DRCD to support communities and how our programmes and schemes, current and future, are helping, I think, to drive the rural economy and help local economies and people become more connected. And of course, what we're doing to help communities bounce back after COVID, I think, is also worth noting. So I think some of the larger programmes we touched on today, like RDF and Town Centre First, for example, are, as we've heard, massive efforts with lots of funding underpinning them. And I think to complement those efforts and the high-level objectives, we also have and will continue to provide smaller scale supports to local groups and organisations. We recognise that smaller groups, staffed and driven in many cases by volunteers, are really what knit communities together. Clubs, men's sheds, women's sheds, community groups, tidy towns, other community organisations, way too many to mention, we think have kept alive that sort of community spirit that I think enriches all of our lived experiences. An example, I think, of that, a good example of that from our department's point of view in the past few years, the Community Enhancement Programme has helped, I think it's over 8,000 groups now with small, modest capital grants to buy equipment and to do small repairs. And I know that this has been a really huge value in practically every community, urban and rural, right across the country. And similarly, more recently, the Community Activities Fund provided €9 million helping organisations deal with running costs and maintenance costs. Look, we made this funding available. We recognise that fundraising in the past couple of years has been a real challenge, particularly for smaller groups and organisations and communities. And we're all aware of the rising cost of utilities and so on. So I think that has been a great help as well. Minister O'Brien, in his closing remarks today, in a few minutes' time, will probably give us a deeper reflection on the supports that we're providing, particularly those supports for disadvantaged communities. These measures include our investments in people as well as in capital measures. We know that we need the bricks and mortar, we need all of the improvements to our public realms and our facilities, community facilities and everything else, vitally important. We also need to support the people who keep everything going in our communities. So it's about people as well as facilities. But now, as Minister Humphreys announced earlier, we are soon launching a new capital fund, which will enable kind of larger scale renovations and repairs to community centres across Ireland. And we're very grateful to Minister Humphreys for securing this funding for this purpose. And now my colleague, Catherine Burns, will take you through just a brief outline of the new fund, the thinking behind it and what it sets out to achieve. And after the presentation, I'll take any queries that come in over the chat. And if we don't get hold of your queries or it's a bit difficult over the chat, we have a dedicated email address which Catherine will give to you and we'll answer queries. And most of you will know us now and our contact details will be at the end of the presentation that Catherine's going to give you. So I'll hand you over to my colleague Catherine Burns now. Thanks very much, Catherine.
Thanks, Paul. This afternoon, we're going to give you a short presentation on our community centres. Everyone knows our community centres are the centre of every village, town, city, and they're in every county in Ireland. They're there for a social, to learn, and to access key services. They're the key of every, as I said, village and town. They're the place where every generation can be part of. They are where people who come to a new area, they go to the community centre to see what's happening, where to get information about what's going on in the area. The community centre also brings people together to work on community projects like our village cleanups or our town cleanups, the tidy towns, doing a community garden. The community centre is always the centre piece of all of those. It's where everybody comes together to do a whole lot of different activities, from physical to social. So what this fund is going to be about is refreshing our community centres. As I said there, we have community centres in every part of this country, and they have been there for years and years. And now it's come to a time that we need to start to modernise them, bring them up. And during COVID in 2020 and 21, the community centres were closed for very long periods of time. And everybody knows when the building is closed down for a long period of time, when you open it up, it needs an upgrade, it needs a refurbishment, it needs a lick of paint, it needs to be brought back in again. And by bringing up our community centres and putting it back again as a focus in our communities, it can provide so many more benefits and supports to everybody going forward. So this new community investment fund, as the Minister said, it is a 50 million capital funding, and it's for refreshing our community centres. So this fund is for the upgrade and the refurbishment of our community buildings. It's not to actually build new ones, it's actually to upgrade and refurbish the ones we have at present. And this investment is across rural and urban communities across the country. What will this fund cover? This fund will provide for projects that will improve access to our community centres. Sorry, this has jumped on me for some reason. It's what's happening here. I'll just continue on. It provides funding for projects. I don't know what is happening here. Just bear with me for a second.
Sorry, Catherine, I know this is not easy. So we'll just keep talking through what was on the slides, even if the slides aren't coming up. Maybe that's the best thing to do. Yeah,
no problem. I think I said there just. So the projects that can be funded under the community centre is projects that's going to be for projects that will give access to the community centre. Everybody can use the community centre, make it user friendly for everybody. Energy reducing projects as well that reduce our carbon footprint, like a new heating system, a new windows, new doors, that to make sure that we reduce our carbon footprint. Also to address safety concerns such as fire safety, security lighting, works to improve the communal facilities, like the kitchens and toilet facilities, like a new cooker, a new fridge, put in a brand new kitchen, and essential maintenance work, which I mentioned there at the beginning, like the paint works, painting, plumbing, electricity works. What's the aim of the fund? The fund is to deliver very high capital projects for community centres that benefits all the community. It's everything in the community. And in this fund, there's three categories. The first category is grants from 10,000 to 25,000 for smaller projects. The second category is from 25,000 to 100,000, with good reasons as to why this project will benefit the whole community. And the third category is our big projects of 100,000 to 300,000. Who can apply for this community fund? The applicants must be from the non-profit community, the charities, and the voluntary sector organisations. And as I said, again, a definition for a community centre is a building primarily used for community activities, events, sports, recreation. It can be a facility where the community rent the hall out to various local groups and may have facilities such as a shared kitchen, small or large meeting rooms, a stage, a large hall. It's like what we all seen when we were growing up. We went to the community centre. A community centre can do anything, and this funding can put a new stage in the community centre for the local drama group. It's community centres, all of those things together. The community centre must be open to the public. It's a place where people gather for group activities, social support, public information, and other purpose. As I said at the beginning, the community centre is for everybody, and it's for everybody's use. The next steps, as I say, is the full scheme documentation will be available on our website, the DRCD website, in the coming days. We will also publicise this via the usual channels. Everyone in here today will be contacted, and our website and our social media platforms will carry all this information. But in the meantime, if you have any queries, you can send this to ourselves at ccif@drcd.gov.ie, and we will respond to any queries you'll have. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks very much, Catherine. And I don't know, Sheenagh, did any questions come in on during that presentation?
Thanks, Paul, and thanks very much, Catherine, for that. I've no doubt that those on the call will be very interested in that the fund has opened today, and we'll have lots of good ideas on how they can make new use of it. And as you say, I mean, it's just a good reminder that, as well as the focus on capital projects as we have in the department, really this is all about the department supporting people as well. There is a query in just on matched funding arrangements that may apply to the scheme, so we might be able to address that now, conscious that more detail will follow when the actual application forms are available on the website. We'll also share these slides with people just because they may not have been able to see them fully as they were going along. So I don't know, Paul, do you want to address that?
Sure, thanks, Sheenagh. Yeah, as you say, the scheme documentation is still in the works, but certainly there'll be a consideration given to the match funding arrangements, particularly for category 2 and 3, as set out there for the larger scale projects. That match funding could be via fundraising or philanthropic means. We're still giving some consideration to that and details to follow.
Thanks, Paul. So there will be some element of matched funding, and we do appreciate that for very, very small groups, sometimes this can be a bit of a challenge. And I guess one of the things that I'm hearing about the fund is that it is important that it's a community centre that is actually in use for the community, and that is being used widely as well. So I guess all the details, as you said, will be available in the documentation, and people now have the opportunity to send detailed queries through to the unit, but it's good news to see that launched today. So thanks, Paul and Catherine. We have now concluded the 3 themes that we wish to cover today. We're very conscious that this is really only a snapshot of the supports that are going on and how they can be put to good use. But I think we may now be in a position to ask Minister O'Brien for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Sheenagh. Sorry, I was just waiting for the camera to open there. And
you're very welcome, Minister. We can we can see you and hear you. So
okay.
We've had a really useful session today. So just invite you now to give your closing remarks. Thank you.
Good to go. Yeah, thanks. No, I was present but not visible for the majority of it, and I know there's been a lot of information shared there now, so I'm not going to overload people with too much or for too much longer either. But just to make a couple of key points, I think, particularly as we begin to recover from COVID, I think it's essential to ensure that our communities bounce back even stronger than before. And as we've seen today, there are a lot of supports available from this department to help do that. As we heard in Jake's presentation, remote working will continue to be a permanent feature of many of our working lives, and this has opened up huge opportunities for people in all areas. It's benefited people in rural areas by allowing people to remain living and working there and made these areas more attractive to live in. I'm very proud to say that this department is leading the way on providing supports to ensure it's possible for people in rural Ireland to work remotely, which will help our communities remain vibrant, but also assist in our climate action efforts as well. Our town centres must be attractive places to live, work in and visit, and I'm glad to see the investment by this department and commitment by government to ensuring that this happens through Town Centre First and the range of funding supports which were outlined. I was very impressed with the story of Boyle. I've seen some of it myself actually a couple of years ago as well when I visited the town. And of course, community centres themselves are a cornerstone of community life for so many. So it's very important that they're fit for purpose and getting the investment that they deserve through the Community Centres Investment Fund announced today. So I think overall, this comprehensive suite of capital funding will make a huge difference in ensuring that our communities and rural areas remain vibrant, vital and viable, and will enhance the quality of community life in those areas. But all those capital funding programmes are also complemented by a suite of ongoing and planned current funding programmes, which play a large part in supporting those living in communities and in many cases ensuring that it's possible for people to engage with these capital supports. Community centres will benefit from capital funding announced today and indeed have been helped with the Community Enhancement Programme funding over the years. Many of these centres are staffed by both volunteers and staff and managers funded under the Community Services Programme under my remit, and we are currently redesigning the Community Services Programme with a view to introducing a more sustainable funding model following the independent review. And many of you will be aware of SICAP and the huge value it delivers. SICAP aims to reduce poverty and promote social inclusion in Ireland by supporting communities and individuals, and it played a crucial role in providing supports to people and groups across Ireland during the pandemic. 2021, for example, over 26,000 people and over 2,500 community groups were helped under SICAP. And I was very pleased to secure a €4 million increase in SICAP in budget 2022, bringing the total budget up to 43 million now. And to me, this increase represents investment in communities and investment in people and the recognition of the value of SICAP on behalf of government. I also secured €2 million in current funding for design and launch of the Empowering Communities programme. And this is a targeted area-based approach focused on areas of particular deprivation using a community development approach. The ECP will tackle area-based disadvantage and will focus on a number of small-scale geographic areas. It will involve active and meaningful engagement with the communities from the outset using an evidence-based approach, and we'll have more details on this in the coming weeks. €1 million funding was also allocated to the new community development pilot started this year, and 7 successful pilot organisations were allocated 125,000 each. And the key aim of the programme is to trial community-led interventions with marginalised groups such as Roma, migrants, new communities, travellers and people with disabilities. Then also just to mention the new place-based leadership programme was launched in January, and the intention here is to build future leaders in Darndale and Drogheda who will positively impact those communities and strengthen the capacity of those already working hard to improve their localities. I do want to touch very briefly on our volunteering infrastructure as well. We're putting a lot of thought and a lot of resources into volunteering. It's been mentioned a few times today. We do now have a national volunteering policy. We do now also have a volunteering centre in every county, and I would encourage you all to access and use that resource. Very briefly, I'll touch on very relevant responsibilities I have in the Department of Social Protection as well, because it would be remiss of me to talk about community and community supports without mentioning the importance of the community employment schemes, TUS and rural social schemes. I know myself, and particularly from being out over the last few months, that these schemes play a particularly crucial role in running so many community projects across the country. I think off the top of my head, about 25,000 participants engaged in them 3 schemes alone. So a nod to those schemes in terms of their importance and the support that we give them as well. So in closing, I'd like to thank all of you for attending today, and particularly those who engaged in community work during COVID for your hard work supporting people and communities throughout the pandemic. You ensured that our communities received the supports they needed during this very difficult time. And it's fantastic to see demonstrated here the breadth of the investment in communities and rural areas by this department and the importance placed on assisting these communities by government. The various layers of funding and suite of funding and the current schemes which support and represents an investment on the part of government in our communities and a commitment to ensuring that our communities continue to grow and flourish. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Minister, for those closing remarks, and very good to remind us of the other supports that are available, targeted at those in communities who need it most in terms of SICAP programme, and the various supports, as you called out there, from the other departments, and how we're trying to help build capacity on the ground, which was actually mentioned earlier in terms of enabling people to get more involved in their community, which is crucial to the wide range of supports that we have in the department. With that, I mean, I hope that people have learned a lot today in the short period of time that we had. The good news is this is just one part of the story. All information on what's been covered today will be available on the department website. We've noted particular detail queries that we'll get back to people on that have come up through the chat, and anyone who has any additional comments or questions indeed can send them to our info@drcd.gov.ie address. All that's left for me to say is it's been fantastic to see the attendance. The calendar of events is there, and the Minister has announced the new Community Centre Fund. Information is available on other supports, as I said, on the website, but thank you to the two Ministers for attending today. Thanks to the panellists from our own department, and also to Nollaig for her excellent contribution, and to all of you for attending, and to those who were responsible for organising today's event. Thanks very much for their efforts. Thank you. Bye-bye.